Come aboard with Nick for the galactic premiere of Space Cases. Join a crew of cosmic kids, Space Cases, working together to find the way home. Space Cases launches next Saturday night at 9/8 Central, only on SNICK.
Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society.
Oh, joy!
Let's rock.
It makes me wanna fart!
Dear Journal, it's me, Doug.
You have it!
Baby's gotta do what a baby's gotta do.
That was a hoot!
On your mark. Get set.
Oh, here it goes!
Welcome to Splat Attack, where we're taking it back to the slime-filled past. I'm your galactic, gactastic co-host, Brett.
And I am your intergalactic, slime-tastic host, Alex. And Brett, are you ready to get out of this world?
You know it. I got my spacesuit all packed up. I got my my lunar doohickeys that will measure the gravitational force that I need, and anything else that sounds space like that, I know I have packed. Trust me, I checked my list.
I've got my lights on attached to the wall, ready to start some passwords to get going. So
awesome.
What are we talking about today?
I'm glad you asked, Alex. Today we're going to be doing a retrospective of Space Cases, where we're going galactic. And what I mean by that basically is that we are going to be covering the entire series as a basic summary with some of our lovely guests who are going to join us on this journey aboard the Christa. So before we jump into the details of things, let's introduce our fellow space cadets who will be joining us on this journey tonight.
My name is Rahi Azizi. I played the character Bova, who hailed from Uranus or Uranus. And my character was the perennial butt of every joke. And so we think he had a chip on his shoulders, in part because of the name of his planet, and just that was sort of his disposition. He was a pessimistic sort of person, and sort of always saw the sort of the not the silver lining, but just always managed to find sort of like the misfortune or sort of the negative outlook of life. And so that was his MO. But yeah, that was my character.
Yes. Hi, I'm Paige, Christina, Heuser, and I played Rosie Ianni, who is the opposite to Bova. So she is obviously the optimist of the group, always sees things on the sunny side, and always looks for good in people, and just basically was the all around to be the cheerful one of the group and the one who always hoped for the good endings.
Hi there, I played Teresa James Davenport, the teacher of the students, the teacher of the kids who are on the Christa, and Ms. Davenport had a British accent, so I had to create that accent, which is fine for me. But this is a multi-leveled character, multi-leveled personality. But I think her main aim was to mother, to teach, and try to instill some kind of regularity in this crazy world that they were about to embark on for the next 7 years. And unfortunately, Davenport had a propensity to panic when something went wrong, which is what the show's about, right? Something goes off. So yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit.
Hi guys, I played Thelma. Such a memorable role for, I think Cary can attest to this, women in Montreal, where we had a chance to play comedy. It was like just amazing. So my role, I was in charge of on-ship operations. I had this special connection to the Christa, the ship itself, except that Thelma had a little bit of a screw loose. So I was supposed to be kind of like in Star Trek, sort of a combination, I think, of Uhura, Scotty, and Chekhov all mixed in one, except you couldn't rely on her. and honestly, the background goofball. That was my job,
Scene
and I got
stealer.
paid for it.
Scene stealer, I think, might be a more appropriate term.
I agree.
My name is Paul Boretski. I played Commander Goddard, Seth Goddard, Commander Seth Goddard.
How would you describe Seth Goddard?
Palatable, irritable, ambitious, independent, helpful, beneficial, sometimes funny, not really though. Understanding. He was frustrated, but I think he was a lot of me. He was a lot of me, is what he was.
And of course, we have to have a fan join us. So, Kat, would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Catherine, or Kat, and I was called Kat before Space Cases, so that nickname was mine first. Sorry, Jewel. Hi, my name is Catherine, and I sat too close to the TV as a child. I'm a Space Cases fan. I watched it when it first aired, and it was my introduction to science fiction, and that's really where my love of the genre began. So this is very cool. Thank you for welcoming me aboard.
Of course, glad to have you.
Nice.
And of course, there are several other characters on the show who the actors and actresses could not be here with us for this call, and they are greatly missed. I know that there are a few who wanted to be here but couldn't. So, Brett, would you like to run through the cast list?
Sure. So in addition to the lovely crew members that are joining us today, we also have Harlan Band, who is played by Walter Emmanuel Jones. He's the only Earth human student aboard the ship. As such, he appoints himself as leader of the group, and when boarding the Christa, takes control as pilot in the command post. He possesses strong leadership qualities, though he can be stubborn with accepting guidance at times. He has often a rivalry with Radu, too. His overconfidence often gets his crew into trouble, but can make up for his mistakes through teamwork and adept combat skills. We also have Radu, who's played by Christian Ayer, and this Andromedan is one of the last of his kind, surviving the Andromedan War with the Spung 11 years before the show takes place. Radu is capable of ultrasonic hearing, plus the strength of 10 men, and was born from a hatchery. So technically, he doesn't have any parents, but considers the crew his family. We also have Catalina, who is played by Jewel State. Catalina is from Titan, which is one of the moons of Saturn, from a race of aliens capable of creating destruction or solving problems with her sonic screams. She often consults her invisible, not imaginary friend Susie for guidance whenever the crew is in a tight bind. She acts as the ship's engineer throughout the crew's journey along with Thelma. And then we also have Susie, who's played by Rebecca Herbst. While considered Catalina's imaginary friend during season 1, she actually joins the crew in the flesh for season 2, bringing with her powers of telepathy and the ability to breathe within any atmosphere of any planet except space through the use of gills. According to the theme song, she is smarter than a million books. It's also revealed in the season 1 finale, On the Road to Find Out, that she switched places with Catalina in order to save her via a rip between dimensions. Though not discussed, it was revealed from the Space Case's official website that her home planet is called Yensid. And then just a little bit on additional recurring characters that we may talk about later. We also have Elmira, who is played by Katie M. McInnick, who is the princess of the Spung race and daughter to Warlord Shank. She is a benevolent oracle who helps the Christa crew on their adventures on a couple of occasions throughout both seasons. She and Radu also have had a shared romantic affection for each other and occasionally keep in touch.
Right.
And last but not least, we have Warlord Shank, who's played by the great George Takei. He's a villain in the series and is father to the princess/oracle Elmira. He is ruthless in pursuing his goals, whether it's reclaiming her daughter or destroying anyone who prevents him from bringing glory to the Spung Empire.
All right. Well, now that we've got our cast of characters for our Gakoids and Slimesters, which is what we call our listeners, Space Cases falls in that gray area of mainstream Nickelodeon, where it's got a huge cult fan base, which is really awesome. Very, very loyal people, because I've been in several different Nickelodeon groups, and you get shows like Hey Arnold and SpongeBob and things like that constantly thrown in, but every once in a while somebody will toss in, does anybody remember this one? And it's Space Cases, and you get a lot of friends who or fans who will go, oh my gosh, you just unlocked a core memory that I had completely forgotten about. And there's also a lot of especially in Nickelodeon realm, some kids who were born in the mid to late 90s that completely missed this show. And for those of you who may have forgotten it or didn't know about it, especially since Nickelodeon just kind of dropped it off the face of the planet, which is awful. Brett, would you give us a bit of an intro and give a synopsis of the show?
Gladly. For those who don't know, 1996 marked a change of the guard at Nickelodeon, both totally in its show lineup and literally. Geraldine Laybourne stepped down as president to head over to Disney, where she became in charge of children's programming, while Herb Skinnell stepped in to fill her shoes and ushered in a second wave of popular Nick shows to their television lineup. Shows such as Mystery Files of Shelby Woo, Kenan and Kel, Hey Arnold, Kablam, Blue's Clues, and of course, a little space odyssey for kids called Space Cases. Space Cases was the brainchild of co-creators Bill Mumy and Peter David, who both worked on the sci-fi show Babylon 5 before producing this one. The kids' sci-fi TV show premiered on Saturday, March 2nd, 1996, and ended January 27th, 1997, with reruns extending until 1998. During its series run, Space Cases has proven to be a crucial part of mid-90s SNICK lineup and has generated a cult following among countless 90s Nick fans to this day. The show featured a group of misfit kids from all over the solar system attending class at the Star Academy in the year 2261, which took inspiration from Mumy's time as a child actor in TV's Lost in Space and a film about outcasts called Blessed the Beasts and Children. The story starts one fateful day at the Star Academy. After field training for 5 space students was canceled, a mysterious avian-like ship approached campus just outside their classroom window. These 5 kids, all from different planetary backgrounds, snuck aboard the ship to explore its interiors, and in doing so, bond with the vessel. Upon the students' disappearance, their assistant principal, TJ Davenport, and Star Dog commander and teacher, Seth Goddard, chase after them into the Christa, where one of the kids accidentally charges the engine, sending everyone aboard deep into hyperspace. Since only the students can control the ship due to their now established bond with the Christa, the group must work together to solve various mysteries and thwart several alien enemies during their 7-year journey back home across the galaxy. Today, we'll cover some of the most memorable moments of the show's history with our crew as we journey through the universe with Space Cases.
All right, so let's dive into some questions now that we've got refreshed everybody's memory who's listening about Space Cases. So Brett, do you want to take the first question?
Sure, and we can alternate from there. And Kat, if you want to ask a few, you're more than welcome to. And starting off, in what ways do you all relate to your characters? Is there one you relate to more, or if so, which one and why?
So I think that as an actor, when you take on a role, there's always a part of you in the role. And that's what creates the root of the character and the truth of the character, the honesty of the character, right? If you're trying to emulate something that's not part of you, then I think it portrays as phony. And I suppose when I think about when I went in for that audition, I saw a woman who was a high achiever, like myself, strive for perfection, like myself, and was someone who is very mothering and nurturing, like myself. And so I saw these qualities, just reading the lines, and I knew that there was comedy in all the lines, and I knew that, like Anik, I was the comic relief to a certain degree, but I also knew that the comic relief could only work if it came from a place of honesty. So every episode, I tried to find somewhere where there's a real, normal, natural human being, and it made all of the other things that happened acceptable, And I guess one of my favorite qualities of Davenport was her vulnerability and her willingness to show it and not to be afraid to show it. And I think that was I'm watching this again after 26 years, and I see just the influence of her being afraid. And yeah, she was funny, but to be honest about that fear. And I think that was very educational for anybody watching, especially teens or people of a certain age, where they want to see all of the unraveling and all of the imperfections of adults.
And I know that Paul had said earlier that his character, Seth, was very much like himself. Paul, when you and I spoke for our Instagram Live, you had shared a story about what you did in auditions that got you the role. Would you mind sharing that story?
It's kind of silly, really, but I went to the audition. There's so many people that go up for roles and stuff, and you try and find something unique you can present, and hopefully you hit the mark when you're there and in front of these people, and you leave some kind of an impression upon them. One of the things that struck me about Goddard is that he's in a place he doesn't normally feel familiar in. He's not familiar with any of these youngsters. The people he's been surrounded by are warriors, and he's gone to war. He's done some horrific acts in war and with his crew, and they've been, so here he is stuck with these children who he doesn't really have any time of day for, and he would sooner just kind of get through the whole experience of being demoted and placed in a position he didn't want to be in as fast as possible with as little amount of pain as possible for him. So anytime the children would irritate him, he knew he couldn't lash out at them, because that's not what he was about as a person anyways. He would express his dissatisfaction by simply grunting. And during the audition, I don't remember what the scene was, and I really don't remember who the character was, but it could have been Bova. It was probably Bova. He was the most irritating of them all. It would have been Bova. And so, Bova said something to me. Let's just say it is Bova said. Bova said something to me as the character, his character, and Commander Goddard kind of responded with just this long, drawn out. That's all it was. Just that, and it was an expression of dissatisfaction, and it was a matter of him and they loved it anyways. To make a long story short, it happened kind of spontaneously for me. I didn't really rehearse it at home. I just kept looking for something, going, there's got to be something here that I can present to these people that is a little bit different from what everyone else might do, and as I was going into the reading, actually, it kind of struck me that there was no allowance for Commander Goddard to express how dissatisfied he was in this scene, even though I could see that he was being irritated by Bova, and that he had to answer, and he didn't want to. So it kind of came to me as I was reading it on the spot, and it was a risk I took, and it worked. I think because it came from an honest place is why it worked. And Billy was the first one to explode in laughter. Bill Mummy.
Nice.
And they loved it. They loved it a lot. But the thing is that I presented them with an honesty of me, the darker side of me. Mm-hmm. And Nick didn't want that. That was a little too intense for them. So they actually came to me before we started and asked me to tone it up. They wanted me to be authoritative, but not mean in any way. And they felt that maybe I was bordering on mean. And they may have been right. I don't know personally, but I did what I had to do. And
well, I mean, I'll say as being a younger actor and starting out, I don't think I planned the audition and all of that the way the rest of you did. But I just knew that I had to go in there and be happy and say everything kind of chipper and upbeat. And to me, that wasn't hard to do. And I really do think that, I couldn't be any of the other characters. I don't think I am fairly cheery within my normal disposition. And just in general, I always think the best of people until sort of proven wrong. So I always give everybody the benefit of the doubt. So I guess in that kind of sense, trying to playing her happy and seeing things, out of the best view possible is very similar to what I'm normally like. So I guess that worked out for me, mainly because, like I said, being younger and auditioning and it's one of the first things that's, I've really been in an acting. And I don't think I put as much effort into understanding what I needed to do as much as I maybe should have had I known more, but it worked for me. And yeah, I was just very fortunate that they saw, what they saw in me and that I was the one to be selected.
We're Rosie.
Well, it's so funny because you say, you had a sunny disposition and you're sitting there with a yellow room in a yellow room, Paige. It really works,
Really enhances the mood.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'm gonna jump in.
Sure.
I'm a bit like Paul in the sense that, okay, there's not much I could relate to a robot with, but when I got the audition, first thing I did was I loved the writing. So for me, writing is everything. The writing spoke to me, and it said that they were looking for this character's description was a mixture between an airline pilot and a hostess from Disneyland. So when I read that, I was already doing a lot of voice work and cartoon stuff. And so,
oh, Thelma, very instructive and yet at the same time has that very light, sweet quality. Because everyone's so happy in Disneyland, aren't they?
So I kind of had that going. And she sort of came from there. And I think what I discovered with the concept of Thelma was the absolute joy of the clown in me that I didn't know. I mean, she was there, but she never had a chance to really come out and party. And I had a chance to do that with Thelma, especially when they would write crazy stuff like, dancing the hoedown and all these crazy things, which I just like, okay, comedy, here we come. And so I related to Thelma in that the child in me was allowed to come out and play. That was about it.
From what it sounds like through all your experiences, you really channeled a deeper part of yourself to be part of the acting experience. And it just allowed you all to just make it a much more authentic experience for everyone, not only acting in the show, but, everyone watching as well. And I think that's it attributes to its lasting legacy as a show that's worth remembering, because it does have a similar feel, at least from my perspective, to another show that I'm into called Are You Afraid of the Dark, that was also produced by Cinar. That kind of heartfelt sentimentality that everything that we're experiencing, whether it's a sci-fi adventure in space or just a bunch of kids telling horror stories around a campfire, it's coming from a place of genuine feeling, and that really helps it last the test of time overall.
I have to add also that you have to give credit to the producers, and mostly John Bell and Otto Hannes, who were our directors in the first season, who gave us permission to let her rip and to try it out. And if it was too much, they'd pull us back. But they really allowed us to go for the gusto. And man, that just doesn't happen anymore. It just doesn't happen anymore. And I think the credit, the show is so foundational on the fact that we were allowed, and Susie Dietz, who was who cast me, as the second
executive
Davenport.
producer.
Yeah. She was the executive producer, yeah, and she wanted us to just have fun, go for it, and if it's too much, we'll tell you. But wow, what a gift! What a beautiful gift to give people who went to clown school. Anik and I went to clown school in France, and man, what a treat to be able to test out the clown world in this scientific world. It's really very special.
A common thread I've noticed through all the episodes we've done on our podcast so far is that every show that we looked a little bit deeper in, it all comes down to that common thread of just having permission to have fun and be yourself and really just live that up to the max. And I think that's why, this, among many other shows we've covered, and even special topics like Nick Takes Over Your School, leave a lasting impression with the people who grew up with Nickelodeon back then. Because it was just that deep, genuine feeling that we could all connect to. And because of that, it just makes us happy all the time. I can't put it any simpler.
Yeah, and I think it takes a special director. I was just speaking recently with the casting director who actually cast our Space Cases. She also cast all of the young actors for Are You Afraid of the Dark? And she basically told me, she said, they went on set and they learned how to act. They got the part, but then it was the directors, they just helped them, they mold them, they sort of nurtured them. And she said, they didn't really have to go to acting school. They were going to school and acting and being in a great show all at the same time,
Yeah, the casting agents here in Montreal, Kenyan Casting, they did Shelby Woo and Are You Afraid of the Dark and Space Cases, and they're very, very popular casting agents still today, and really warm people that were always encouraging with actors. And I think a success of a show is the people that are surrounding you, and so all the professionals. One of my favorite directors was Adam Weissman. I don't know if any of you guys remember Adam.
Sure.
Became a great friend as well. But every time we came on set, he was so prepared. He had the whole crew, everybody laughing, but he knew exactly what he wanted to do when, So things moved along efficiently, but he was never stressed as a director. I had experienced some other directors a little bit stressed, whereas he was like, one joke after another. And those things also, like Cary said with John Bell, they just allowed us as actors to have that freedom. So, I mean, if whatever we give off, the audience is going to get. So I think it's in everyone's investment that we have a good time, right? It's like...
Exactly.
Going along with, and you all may have touched on this a little bit already, but I'm going to gear this one, start the shift over to Rahi, since we haven't got to hear from him much yet. But what was one of the most enjoyable things about being on Space Cases?
It might sound cliche, but literally just coming to set every day. I mean, as Anik and Cary had mentioned, that it was just a really great set, in part because of the directors and the crew, and just being in Montreal, everyone was so warm and friendly. In the cast, I mean, we just had so much fun. Like I loved being in the company of everyone on the Zoom. It was such a learning experience too. As a young actor, you're watching professionals and like Paul and Cary and Anik, and you're just I'm learning from them. And so it was just such a delightful experience just to be on set every day. Also it was fun. I mean, it was a fun set. It was they were like jump tubes, and you're doing. It was a really. There was a lot of action involved. I mean, it was an action-packed show in some ways, but there was also a lot of theater. I mean, there was one episode, it's called Runaway, and Anik, you had mentioned Adam, and as sort of comedic as the show was, there were times when there were some really serious episodes, and I think there was the narrative was actually really sort of interesting and compelling. Kat, I think you had circulated the Bible of the show. It had this whole sort of backdrop of like alien refugees, and none of that really I don't recall if that was sort of really articulated in the dialogue, but it was always there in the backdrop. Anyway, this one episode, Runaway, where my character and Christian's character, Radu, were trapped in this shuttle and we were losing oxygen. And Adam we had met with him before we started shooting, and we watched this movie. I can't recall the name of it. It was with Gene Hackman, where his character, him and some other character actors, they were playing astronauts, and they were stuck in this shuttle, and they were losing oxygen. And so this was we were just watching it for inspiration. And it was fun, just sort of performing and, pretending that we're literally dying, and I'm 13 years old and sort of, playing this really dramatic scene episode. And so it was challenging to be certain, because I hadn't really done anything like that, but it was also it was really interesting and fun to really role play in that way. So yeah, it was just being on set every day was just a blast. That's my sort of favorite part of the entire experience.
That's great to hear that you really got into the role by like looking at that for inspiration, just really going for it, especially with Christian Air, who was with you in that spaceship pod for that episode. It really brought a new level of like theatrical tension to it that I didn't see in previous episodes before.
Yeah, no, exactly. And as Anik had mentioned, Adam was a director there, and he was a really great, strong director. As were all the directors who directed the episodes. They would rotate the directors, and so gave us sort of like the guidance and the foundation that we could look to in terms of inspiration and sort of the performances that they would try to bring out of us, but at the same time giving us the freedom to just perform and be natural, because you can't have it sort of be that environment be too controlled, and sort of everyone sort of brings something different to their character and their performance. So but yeah, it was a really great set. I mean, I think a lot of it was sort of that, just being in Montreal. It was like just a very different culture. It was a very warm culture, and something that was, to me, being on American sets, struck me as sort of distinct and different. It's more familial.
Yeah, we've interviewed with a couple of different guests before, like DJ McHale from Are You Afraid of the Dark and Robin Ross from 15, and they definitely mentioned the similarities and differences between like filming in Montreal and filming in Orlando Studios, Nickelodeon, and just like how unique and quirky it was to be in Montreal when they filmed the episodes. And I think that added like a nice little tone or undercurrent to the episodes of Space Cases and Are You Afraid of the Dark, as an example.
Alan Goodman also has confirmed what you've said, so very much so.
I actually have a question for Kat. How did you first find the show, and what made you a fan? I'm particularly curious because it might be similar to how I found the show as well.
I first discovered the show through Nickelodeon magazine, actually. Space Cases was featured in their Ooze News article. So it was 2 full pages of the premise and character bios, and an interview with Bill Mooney, and just like really extensive stuff. And I was 10 years old at the time, very interested in science and tech and astronomy, and so it was intriguing, and I started watching, and at sort of 10 years old, entering those weird tween years and not having a good handle on who you are is really tough. So I found the show to be extremely relatable. It just kind of spoke to me. I felt like I was a bit of a misfit, and the show itself didn't really feel like anything that I had seen on television before. And I was just fascinated by it, and I quickly became invested in the characters and their journey.
That's great to hear. I'd say in terms of my connection to it, I didn't find out through it in Nickelodeon magazine, despite having like several issues that I used to collect. But I caught it on SNICK because I'd always, tune in every week to see what was showing up. And it happened to be like, I think either the second or the third slot. Alex, you might have to confirm for that. But I just remember seeing it before Are You Afraid of the Dark and be like, oh, wow, this is so cool. I'm not used to seeing like sci-fi shows for kids. Like the only thing I had previous exposure to back when I was like around 8, 9 was Mystery Science Theater 3000. So I thought it was kind of similar to that, and I would enjoy it because of like, maybe it had some comedy in it, maybe it's some, tension, some adventure, some quirky alien characters. And I just knew, I mean, it also helped that, Walter was on the show as well, because I knew him from Power Rangers fame at the time, and Alex and I are big Power Rangers fans. But I essentially, he lured me in, but I stayed for all the quirky, diverse characters that I got to meet. And it's something, I don't know what it is, just something special about it that really kept me hooked, and coming back to it as like an old friend that I like to revisit.
The funny thing is, the show displaced another arguably more beloved show on SNICK, I think Ren and Stimpy. And so I courted some enmity after the first season when I went back to school, because we were tutored on set, like Paige and I and Jewel. And then when the show was on hiatus, go back to school. And so remember when it aired, it basically replaced Ren and Stimpy in that lineup.
That's
So
it.
a lot
Yeah,
of
the
kids
third
were
slot.
cool. You know? I think our show was way better.
There it is.
But
If you can,
and I was a fan of Ren and Stimpy, but I remember a lot of kids were like, kind of upset at me, like,
Oh no.
well, if it makes you,
replace Ren and Stimpy, like,
if it makes you feel better, I actually have Ren and Stimpy in space on a poster behind me, so they're up there floating somewhere around Christa trying to get aboard.
Space Madness.
Really popularized. The
Yeah,
whole
Space
sort of,
Madness.
That space episode, I remember Ren and Stimpy Lost in Space or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just funny you mentioned that because that was sort of, it replaced Ren and Stimpy, and it's so cool that it has this following because Ren and Stimpy is such a hard act to follow.
It is, but I think they definitely set the foundation for any future lineups for the shows to be in there, and I think it was a hit from the get-go.
Going with our next question, and the way the series ended is very difficult, and I don't really want to bring the mood down. I want this to be upbeat and fun and jovial and have a good time. But excluding how the show ended, what were some of the challenges that you all had faced individually to overcome and make the show as good as it was?
I think I'll say briefly, to play Thelma, I was often almost every day on the makeup chair at about 5:30 a.m., 6 o'clock. And sometimes the shooting would go until 11 that night. So there were times I remember, because Thelma, I really had to play her in a very aligned way. It was very inner and very energetic, as you might have seen sometimes even in the bloopers. Like I have to snap out of it because I'm just in her. So it took a lot of energy, and sometimes I found that super challenging. The show itself, though, I mean, every episode was so much fun, and they were like, they were spending a lot of money per episode, so it was a huge playground for us. But yeah, I just remember the show overall. As far as challenging, that was about it. Otherwise, it was a super blast. Um, and like everybody said already, the crew, we all got along, and between takes, we were having fun. And then when it came time to the take, sometimes we had to double focus and just like, what was that line again? But a real pleasure, a real joy, and a joy to connect with each character. So I don't know about any particular challenges. I don't know if any of you lived any particular challenges outside of like having to be tutored and then do this at the same time.
No, I don't think that I don't remember anything really being so much of a challenge, but I guess, looking back on it and kind of thinking back on, our time there, I wasn't even bothered with the makeup from what I can remember. That part was fine. I did, I know I grumbled a little bit because the eyebrow thing, I had to get, they had to disappear. So they had to be glued and waxed. And so that was a bit of annoying, but even the bald cap wasn't too bad. I think that if I could talk to my younger self back in the day, I'd probably tell her, cut your hair so that the bald cap and everything would just work better. Because I think that was one thing that, pre-watching, I feel like I was very stiff. And I think half of it was because I had a whole mess of hair about, same length as I have now, trailing down the back of my jumpsuit. And it definitely hindered, what I could do. And but I was young, and heck no, I'm not cutting my hair short. It's going to stay as long as I want it to be. And they asked me on more than one occasion, why don't you just cut it shorter to make this easier? And I just was stubborn and wouldn't. So so for me, that was maybe the only slight challenge was, trying to make things seem as normal as they could, while having my tail of hair down the back of my neck. But
from what I've seen in the episodes, they conceal that very well. Like somehow the design of the costume, you couldn't even tell. I think there's like a turtleneck that helps with that. And then I think that was
the
it.
jumpsuit.
Well, and you'll see like the, the transition from the very beginning where it was, was almost in like a full face where just my face was out and it was a full head piece. And then it changed to be, sometimes it was the hat. And then sometimes it was in the second season, then it became more like the plastic pink bald cap with the headband. And they just had a little, triangle piece that came up at the back and it was like a turtleneck. And each, every few episodes, they adjusted it. So it was a little bit easier and easier. And it became more like a natural part of my character. And of course, they nailed it really well towards the end of second season. It was so much easier to put on and to use. And I agree, it looked a lot better.
So that was actually going to piggyback of my next question for you. Like, because you were able to, work with a different wardrobe for season 2, did you feel that lent to like your ability to be more expressive with performances during season 2? Or was there not much of a difference between season 1 and season 2 with your costumes?
Well, definitely the costumes, they had definitely changed. And with Rosie, for sure, with the different headpieces. I wasn't the biggest fan of wearing the big hat at the beginning. That had to be like custom fit to my head. And it was, wasn't the biggest fan of that when it did limit a lot. And I do think that just in general for me, as the seasons went on and as the episodes went on, I think just because I became more comfortable with the crew, with the cast, with just being in the environment, it was just, I was able to embrace the character more. Things seemed more natural, and then in turn that just, I think, kind of made the character open up a little bit more, and I think she seemed a little bit more outgoing and a little, things just seemed a little bit easier for her as the character progressed. So
I hated my antennae. Like I was just
you did.
So annoying. It would fall off, and
I remember, yeah, it used to fall off all the
I
time.
hated when they would cut my hair. I was like, I was 13. I was just like, my hair was, literally the only thing that I kind of had going in my life, other than this, being on a Nickelodeon television. But when that episode that the characters switch places.
I was just going to ask about that.
Makeup, and their call time changed from 8 a.m. to 5 a.m. I was like, I don't even know 5 a.m. exists. It's like a concept. And sitting in the makeup chair like you did day in and day out for just those few days for what it was an hour or 2 hours or something. I was like, oh my God, this is just so difficult. It was all that makeup and the ball cap, and so all the kudos to you. I was so unappreciative of the fact that my sort of makeup and the wardrobe was comparatively a lot easier to bear. I think Radu the same thing, like his hair and ears. And then the Spung characters, I don't, even George Takei was, obviously prolific actor. He was for a child show willing to sit in the makeup chair for so long, and to play his part is really, so cool and commendable that he really, believed in the show, and obviously his relationship with Peter David. But yeah, that makeup was, was taxing, but you did amazing with it.
Oh, thanks.
I spoke to an acupressurist, and I asked her about the space between the third eye, the space between the eyebrows. And she says that's one of the most sensitive spots on the face. And it can cause you to have tics if you press on it for too often. If you do, it's like the Chinese torture, right? The water torture. And you had that every day on your face. So no wonder
really
it felt all weird and
what you just said, you can't articulate it, right? This is like a nerve. I at that age, I can't conceptualize those things. That there are nerve endings there, or that this is something that is within any person. I just thought I was like, okay, don't complain. it's like you have a per diem craft service, you want a donut at
Bova.
Well, that explains why Bova's race is all like, kind of downer disposition, because all that pressure there from the wishbone that shoots electricity.
Yeah, the wishbone. Yeah.
It was thanks to the like I would say in terms of one of the hard things was, you're especially again with like the adult actors who were consummate professionals, but who had trained and like Paul, I remember having conversations with you about like Stanislavski and method and Meisner, and then you go from that to like, okay, I have to do algebra now, for 2 hours with the tutor. It's like, it's just it was a weird sort of paradigm shift all of a sudden. I'm like, no, I'm an actor, I'm an artiste. I memorize my lines. And like, it's like, no, it's like by law, you have to do this and you have to maintain a certain grade point average or else, you'll lose your spot. So.
It's funny, Rahi, when you talk about the makeup, just going back to the wishbone you had there on the third eye. In the pilot, the way they had Thelma's character was really beautiful, like the hair pulled back, the 3 little markers on the forehead. And it's amazing because it was also what gave me the impetus to play her that way. She was a little more ethereal than this chick. But the minute they came up with this helmet and the whole thing, it's like you had to roll with it, right? So when that first season started, that first episode, and they stuck that helmet on top of the head with all the makeup and then no eyebrows, I kind of went, okay, let's go with this. And then her goofy side came out, but there was also a potential for such drama in the pilot that was kind of interesting. And so yeah, the evolution of these characters all in a sense were very interesting to see from one season to the next, from the pilot to the seasons and so on.
Yeah, it sounds like the relationship between the actor and actresses with their wardrobe is kind of symbiotic in that sense. Like the design informs the personality a little bit and vice versa. Very interesting.
I mean, less so for Paul and I, just because we wore, and well, not so much for Walter, because he's playing one of the kids, but for us the adults, I mean, we just had the regular old outfits, so we had to create our characters from a more a deeper place, I think.
Except when your brain went up, Cary. You really portrayed that. That was really
19
funny.
times its normal size.
That was really funny.
Darling.
It actually reminded me of this, I don't know if anyone remembers this, but there's like this obscure animated show on MTV's Oddities called The Head Saves the Earth. And that's what I immediately went to that, like, oh my goodness, this memory of Space Cases unlocked another latent memory from like when my Uncle Phil, who was a teenager in high school, babysat me and we used to watch this show. And I'm like, whoa, blowing my mind. And it had to do with aliens too. So funny little connection there. But how was that, like acting with exactly that? What else?
It looks
there it is.
like
Wow.
Davenport's head.
Yep.
Wow. So wow, watching that show again, it's probably one of my more favorite shows, only because it showed up the incredible technical and aspects of the crew that worked with us and for us. And it showed just how incredible Anik was, our makeup artist, who managed to transform, Bova into Rosie into Bova, and Walter into Radu. I mean, that, like, those ears and the hair, and so I was so just amazed in watching the show itself. But that, if you think that was one of the more difficult shows for me, because at the time I was pregnant. I was pregnant with my daughter Paige, whom I named after this year. And I had to get up at 4 a.m, and we would work very late at night, because there was so much technical work in that. And I had kind of shot myself in the foot, because I decided that I was going to change her voice. Davenport's voice to encapsulate the hugeness of her knowledge, and also speak more quickly because there was just so much happening in her brain. Well,
That must have been a challenge on top of the British accent.
Oh, and on top of that, right? And so it was a tough. I set myself up, and it was a tough act to follow. And so when I watched the show just recently, I'm killing myself laughing because I remember screwing up the one line in particular over and over and over again because I was just speaking so quickly, and I couldn't get, with the English accent, and the head that made me go like this, so I had to keep my head back. It was kind of heavy.
Constantly trying to find equilibrium with everything.
Yeah, you had a lot of techno babble and like a lot of, I would imagine, paragraphs of dialogue to memorize and deliver too, especially in that episode.
Yeah, but in general also, and to that point, Kat, in general, Davenport had a lot of the technical babble. Yeah. And then to imbue an English accent on top of that. Well, actually, I had a lot of fun because I would change the word schedule to schedule. And of course, the producer's like, is that a word? I'm like, it is. And I had to go and find it. I had to go find an English person who would say, yeah, we say schedule. We don't say schedule. But I was constantly met up with them checking just to make sure that I was speaking properly, which was all right.
I keep it authentic after all.
Yep, that's right.
Well, you did touch on one of the questions that we had was, what is it like going back and watching the show as an adult?
Because it really has been 26 years. And I mean, I watched one show and I didn't even remember shooting the thing. Like some of the shows were not as good as others, right? There's some that just stay in your mind, and other ones was just a day and a week gone by, in my opinion. I mean, it's personal. But what I realized, to grow up watching this show, they saw all of our human inadequacies, all of our limitations. And I mean, I learned from watching the show, learning the kids learning how to work together, learning how to, work out with, deal with a teacher who is absolutely bonkers with fear. And, wow, I don't think there's a show like that in this day and age. I don't think so. I really don't. And I was so incredibly awestruck by the Rahi and Paige's trajectory. Their growth, their maturity, their embracing so much. I mean, wow, what a great show. And, hats off to Peter David and Bill Mooney, who struck so hard. They had that Bible down pat. It was going to be 7 seasons, not 5. And, there was a whole 7 seasons for 7 years. And they had it all mapped out, and they knew exactly every season, every episode, and how it was going to evolve. And like you said, Anik, the writing was just brilliant.
If I can
playful,
Yeah, if I can sort of inject a perspective, like watching the episodes as a fan, like as a child, and then going back and watching as an adult, I think that, like all good science fiction, it took some like pretty heavy universal topics and examined them through like the sci-fi lens and made them digestible for kids. So it was more than just Star Trek for kids, though. Like that's a good start to explain it, but there were these additional layers and complexities that did make it really special. And at the time I didn't really have the vocabulary to really communicate what that was, but I did definitely sense it. The show explored topics, in addition to talking about everybody's different cultures, like they talked about racism and slavery and wrongful imprisonment and mortality and dementia. And like, that's a lot of heavy stuff for kids. But ultimately, no matter what, literally that's the end of season 1. Welcome to the end of season 1. But yeah, it's heavy stuff, but you interject moments of, jokes and lighthearted, the friendships and everything, all those different layers into it. And no matter what the characters faced, they overcame adversity and worked together and learned from each other and grew. And it's just like, there's that line in the first episode, just like the vacuum of space isn't fair. It can destroy anyone who doesn't have what it takes to survive. And I think that the crew of the Christa would have survived because they had each other, ultimately, is what it comes down to. Like they put their differences aside, they worked together, and you could see the evolution of their friendships and how they became like a family over time.
Yeah, especially
as they sort of, like they accepted each other, like you were saying, flaws and all, like as flawed as they were. And I think that's amazing. Like too often, like I'm gonna get off my soapbox in a second, but like, too often, labels and differences are used to divide us just as human beings. So I think it's great to have a show that celebrated that spirit of unity and cooperation in spite of, there's the pessimist and the optimist and, the weird kooky one with the imaginary friend, her head in the clouds. Like that really doesn't matter. It's just everybody, all the characters had, heart to them. And that's what I sensed as a kid. And I was, I loved the stories and it was fascinating and science fiction, but it was the spirit of the show, I think, that really kept me engaged with it and coming back. And what I still appreciate now as an adult, and I can speak to it more eloquently than when I was a kid, just like, I really love this show because the characters are cool and they're friends and stuff. Like, 10-year-old me trying to articulate all these universal concepts. But yeah, I think that that's it. And in addition to, you talked earlier about the series Bible, where there is a backdrop, whether it's spoken in dialogue or not, of this really complex, like government and cultures and the colonization of the planets. Like it's a complex world. And you throw in these characters who are complex as well, and just like, here's the situation, and, let them go. And, there's conflict there within the characters and between the characters, and it could have gone on for 7 years plus. I mean, I hope they would get home, but I'm just saying there's just a lot of material there to work with, just having these people on a ship together and go. Like these stories kind of, I would imagine, write themselves at a point when the characters really well. And I can't speak for Peter and Bill, but it was just, as I'm a bit of a writer myself, and it's just having that playground would seem like a gift, I think, as an actor too, I would assume.
Absolutely.
Totally. I actually feel similar with like Are You Afraid of the Dark, because you and I, Kat, have similar qualities to us in the sense that we are like the masters of our own shows. But like I really love the idea that Space Cases kind of provide that groundwork of like, this is a playground where you can figure out all these different adventures. And that's what part of, seeing the show end got me like so teary-eyed, even just going through the episodes all over again in preparation for this episode. I'm like, but we're just getting going. Why can't we keep going? Like, yeah. It just sparks my imagination and trying to wonder, well, what else are they going to do on their way back home? And what is it going to look like once they get back home? Like, I hope one day in some form or another, someone like takes the idea and run with it and somehow expand upon it, even if it's like in, I don't know, graphic novel form or comic book or whatever, whatever sort of media.
We want that so badly.
An animated series of Space Cases, I could definitely see that too. Yeah.
Have the original cast back to all you guys back to voice your own characters.
Voice your characters.
Sure. I'm spoiled. I can't imagine anybody else playing your characters. I can't. I can't.
Okay, so Thomas and I were talking about the show, my husband, and he worked for Cinar for many years. He was the producer for the animation side of things, and he said, "Oh, there's no way that Space Cases could be animated because the artist would say, oh no, that's too many characters. I can't do that many characters. I can't introduce that many characters. That's just too much drawing." So that we got away with all of that technical stuff. Like Anik, I was watching the show where you were. It was the show where you leave the Christa because you.
We've gone through to the other side.
Thank you.
Oh yeah,
Thank you.
because I've and the computer and I remember they booked the studio right next to where Mel's, where we were, and you were up there flying in space and you kept falling over because of the wires were, and I was like, all the work for that show, all the technical aspects, the green screen, and then getting
Incredible.
Rahi in there and getting him up on cables and walking or in space up way up there. Like, I mean, and they had the cameras and the cranes work. Oh, wow.
The sand they had everywhere for the second season, and we were just spoiled. We were spoiled, and it was really, really a great show, a great show to play in. It was a playground.
Yeah.
I mentioned this when we were watching, I think, one of the episodes last time, where it's sort of it predicted Zoom or Skype, before, because a lot of
long distance calls.
Long distance interact with characters via the screen, and there was one episode where I think Katie Seagal was like voicing one of the characters, Mother.
Yeah, she was Ma, yeah.
Right, and then there was the episode of the doppelgangers. That was all. It was just we were Skyping,
Evil twins,
guest starring characters.
It's very cutting edge for the time with its graphics and
that
ideas as well.
We're just now sort of with the pandemic embracing
right
that technology.
I mean, the first episode, I read CGI, and I looked up and went, "What the hell is that?" What's CGI?
Yeah,
computer generated
images.
I mean, Nickelodeon had not done a lot of, I think, maybe Are You Afraid of the Dark? Obviously, probably had some, but to the extent
Not
that
to this
Space Cases
extent.
had, was I think a first, because you had your animated shows, and then you had shows like All That, which was sketch comedy. Alex Mack, I think, probably did obviously CGI.
Yeah.
It was limited to the puddle though, like her turning into the puddle.
The puddle in the laser zaps, and things like that.
Yeah, all due respect to that show. But yeah, Space Cases was really groundbreaking in that regard. I think for a show a kid's show to embrace that type of CGI and at the same time sort of be able to rely on the strength of the dialogue and the stories, because it's not like we were going around like shooting each other with like lasers. There was action involved. There was a lot of running and acrobatics, I think, especially like on Walter's Harlan's part. Like he was an actual martial artist, and so they would integrate that into the show, and it was really cool watching him just on the set. But we weren't sort of fighting each other. It wasn't that kind. It was more of a hewed closer to Star Trek in that it was much more character driven, which was cool. So
you guys, you didn't have weapons on the ship. You didn't have phasers or anything. No guns. It was all
fighting the obstacles
and fighting the obstacles and thinking your way out of them. And I mean, I guess Paige and Rahi, you had. I always wondered about if you're going to take some of your crew on an away mission and you're potentially going to encounter danger, you wouldn't want the ones that resort to hand-to-hand combat there as your first line of defense, right? You'd want the ones that shoot electricity and heat and like your kids, because like you were the youngest of the crew, you were generally, characters were left behind. At the end of season 1, you jump in and saved the day, but they brought in, Radu and Harlan and Kat and Goddard and Thelma were on, the sister ship. And then, Bova was complaining. It's like, why he never lets us off this ship? He thinks we're too young to do the job. And you're just there like complaining about it. And you're ultimately, you go up against, Warlord Shank and just toast him, like.
Yeah,
I remember talking
small
to
and mighty,
David, who, I was like trying to sort of explore the possibilities in terms of my powers, hey, so this Bova, is he able to shoot electricity from his fingertips? And Peter David was very sort of adamant, no, it's just from his antennae, like he's not.
But I watched, all of season 1, and I couldn't get through it all, but you had so much more on, and both you and Paige, you had so much more on the second season. You actually used your powers, whereas at the beginning you didn't so much. So I was that's what I mean about the trajectory, and that I think you reminded perhaps the writers that you also have special powers and that you can also help in this situation. Because I noticed a big change in terms of you, like, spitting the red ball at Reaver
You got gutsy,
right?
There's a lot of
And,
character growth there for both of you. Yeah,
a lot more. Yeah, to get rid of the vines and stuff like that. Rahi, yeah,
That was hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, Rahi had touched on this a couple of times, and I'm going to shift this question to Paul first, and then we'll branch it out to the rest. But almost every character, if not every character, played a different version of themselves at some point, whether they turn into Spung or some other variation. Paul, what was it like to play a Spung?
It was just this wacky character that Cary knows what you were there with me when we did this Spung stuff, and
yeah,
I mean it was just animalistic. Kind of.
Well, it was actually fun how we started that. We started the scratching. We didn't know what was going on, and so it was the slow lead, and then all of a sudden we were these lizards.
Yeah, it was lizard stuff. I mean,
we had a lot of fun. We created a lot of fun,
especially with the worms and that big circle thing with the go around and around.
Like pog containers.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it was actually the most fun I had in all the episodes playing that Spung character. When we got to ham it up, I loved it when we got to ham it up. I mean, and that's all I did was ham it up.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no depth to him at all. He liked worms and wanted to eat children, I guess. I mean,
we're losing.
If you wanted an analogy, he became the really bad side of Goddard. The side that Nickelodeon didn't want anybody to see.
Rated S for Spung.
I just remember having so much fun playing him because there were no holds barred. I went all out with it, and nobody said anything else to me. Nobody said, "Hey, don't do that. It's too much," or whatever. They let me go. Both Cary and I seemed to just have a blast with it.
We actually, again, we were allowed to kind of create our own thing. We said, how about we do this? And how about we climb through this? Because they weren't quite sure how to.
Well, it was and our relationship when we became Spung was really rough. we were the scene in the tube when we get stuck in the tube and we don't know. We don't.
Oh yeah, we're like fighting.
Get away from that! Very animalistic and had
very animalistic and creeped cat out apparently.
I don't know. That was I mean, you see, like the adults on the ship were kind of like the parental figures after a while, and to see like the more aggressive side of somebody that you count on to get you through 7 years of being a teenager in space and help you survive. Like the fact that they are then attacking you, like that's that's a concern, to put it mildly. How do you fight them? How do you turn them back? Is there a way? And then at that point, the kids had to figure it out themselves without the help of their caregivers, essentially.
The script itself gave me a hint on how to proceed. With a Barry White kind of voice was the direction.
Was it really Barry White?
Yes. And I did my best, and I could not come even close to Barry, but I did my best, and that's what I tried to. Silky. Barry White. I mean, he's Mr. Silky. Deep sex.
Silkworm.
Oh no!
Oh gosh!
Oh no!
That actually was a stage direction in the script, so that was my hint on where to go with him.
I was very nervous at first because I was in a semi-quasi comfortable place with Thelma. And the challenge I had with Thelma was I never really had any interaction with the other characters, like deep. When Paul says, there was no depth. Well, let me tell you, Thelma, not very deep. And a lot of techno
later, but continue.
Yeah. A lot of techno babble as well. So I don't know. Overall, it was really fun it was really nerve-wracking because I was like, I'm exposing the human side of Thelma. What does that mean? I had no idea, and I had one episode to do it. And then when I watched the episode, I said to Kat the other day, I said, it's like I was all about playing and being silly and joyful, suddenly having this big PMS breakdown in the middle of the Christa and saying, I miss you, I miss you. So it was like, whoa. But she was definitely high in emotions because for me, my inner secret that I had chosen with Thelma was that she always wanted to be human because she wanted to be with the others as a family, but she was always in the background. So it allowed me to kind of do that and go outside the box emotionally. But when you watch it, you're like, whoa, okay, interesting.
It's like seeing petals unfold.
I remember you struggled with that. I remember you struggled with that because she really wanted to do right by Thelma by becoming a human, and you know, you say earlier
discovering
that you don't have feelings. I don't know what it is to feel, and then, you know, do I have empathy and stuff? And so you had to put that all in one episode, and it's hard. And I don't think sometimes I question whether the writing enabled you to really kind of go as far as you should have gone or could have gone. I guess not should have, but could have gone. You know,
right.
Thelma had some really deep moments, even when you were, you know, when she was an android. Like there was one episode, It's My Birthday Too, where Radu wants to have a birthday. He doesn't know when his birthday is. And he's crying because the crew found out that, you know, he just wanted to belong. He made up his own birthday. And Thelma, Radu is basically lamenting, like, never, you know, not having a family. And Thelma says, well, it's always been, I'm going to butcher the quote, and it's so beautiful. It's always been my understanding that a family is not only those from whom you were born, but those to whom you belong. And then she looks like, Radu kind of looks at her and she's like, did I screw up too? And like, that was such a profound thing for Thelma to say. And she didn't even realize what that was. And another moment, like she talks to Catalina about friendship when Catalina is fighting with Susie about the comet in one episode that they, you know, discovered together. And it's like, oh, do all friends fight? It's like, well, you know, they fight because they care. And, you know, she kind of is, you know, Thelma's trying to process this and what does that mean? And, you know, I just think that there are a couple of moments even in Break On Through to the Other Side where, you know, Thelma feels rejected by the crew and she like that she's useless, and then comes back. Like she's, you know, does she feel? She asks, she's like, I don't know if I, you know, was feeling human emotions or if I'm simply emulating human emotions. And then Davenport says, well, maybe I can help you figure it out. So I think there's an interesting link there. Davenport went inside the computer, Thelma turned human. Like there's an interesting dynamic there that they can explore. Even Susie too has been, you know, seen the side of the machine and been in Thelma's mind and knows what it's like to be alive. So there was a lot of, you know, looking back as an adult, I'm like, there are storylines here that I really wish they had explored a little more. There's just so much depth.
This is just what I said before. I mean, on the surface, Space Cases just looks like a slapstick happy show or, you know, silly show, but there's so much depth to it. And I think it's the tribute is to the writing, but also to each of us as actors, our investment into creating a real solid grounding from which to grow and to explore and experiment. And, you know, that we all had that seed, and it was growing as it went, and it just got stopped.
There's always hope for the future. So for the lasting legacy, in terms of how the show has lived on through fans, conventions, media, social media, etc., how does it feel to have passionate fans connect with you, keep the spirit of the show alive through their dedication all these years?
If I may, I'll keep this brief, but as Canadian actors, extremely heartwarming because we're certainly not used to this big either Hollywood or stardom kind of thing. We tend to work because we're passionate about the art form and blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly when the internet started to blow up and people started reaching out through Facebook and Instagram and stuff, it's very heartwarming very heartwarming. It's like, wow, you mean my work perhaps really touched someone's heart? That's just lovely to hear, you know. And I always thank the fans when they reach out, because it's meaningful to know that as an actor, and it's nice that they actually take the time to do that.
Yeah, I echo exactly what Anik said, has just said, that there is no fan base up here in Canada. There's, we do our thing. People recognize us. Maybe there's a little bit more of a fan base on the French side of things, but when Facebook started, that's when the fans started looking for us, and I was awestruck. I was, wow, just wow, you watched it and you're seeking us out. It's like, yes, humbling. I'm humbled by it all, and I think after watching the show all these years later, I can understand. I understand the impact that the show had on the audience. It makes sense.
This question, I think, would probably be best suited for Kat, and that is, what makes Space Cases an important piece of 90s Nick history to you?
I guess tying into a sort of legacy, what I see as a legacy, it feeds into that. Sort of an easy question to answer, but hard one to explain, because this is obvious. This is a weird sort of full circle moment for me in a way. Like I'm a fan of the show, but one of the most important things that it gave me was a sense of belonging, like through watching the characters on screen. And as a kid, to know that it's okay to be my weird, wonderful self. And yes, people are going to doubt me, but I also, who cares? Prove them wrong. And as an adult, with the resurgence of sort of 90s nostalgia and heavy stuff going on all over the world, and communication being limited to internet and Zoom, the show helped me connect with some amazing people, like over the years too, but especially recently, who've become very close friends, and we formed our own little crew of misfits in a way, and it's a group of authentic people, and we accept each other weirdness and all. So I just feel really grateful for the show, and like that's a really awesome legacy to have, you guys. Like I just want to express my gratitude, like over and over again. Thank you for your work on this wonderful show, and I wish I wish the rest of the cast and some of the crew and Peter and Bill and others were here too. I'd love to speak with them about it too, just to thank them. Because it was definitely the spirit of the show was all about being yourself, working together, unity, and overcoming obstacles. And to be talking about it 20 some years later with some of the cast is it's if I were to go back, if I were to tell my 10-year-old self that she would be doing this, her head would explode. So this is a little difficult for me to wrap my head around, but just thank you guys.
Of course, thank you for sharing that, and it just makes me think of like how even we connected too, because when we were coming up with topics for season 2, we had a whole bunch of different ideas, and then in the back of my head, I saw Space Cases for whatever reason, and that got me thinking, and then connecting with you, Catherine, and then kind of branching out from there. And it may be a little bit out there and a little bit in the undercurrent of like 90s Nickelodeon nostalgia, but it's still like a hidden gem and something that's really worth people's attention. So I urge anyone who's listening this to go back and see what makes it so special. It's a interesting sci-fi show. It's got a lot of quirkiness, but also it has a lot of heart and layers to it. And I feel like it just gets better every time you view it. Like you get a deeper understanding as a result. And I think, for being that kind of safe space for social outcasts, or like, people who are a little bit unusual compared to everyone else, it's just a bastion and a beacon of hope and light and togetherness that I love about this. And I really resonate a lot with that story and how all you come together through the show.
And I do want to reiterate to all of you Slimesters and Gackoids who are interested in checking the show out, you're not going to find it on Paramount Plus. You're not going to find it on a streaming service. Nobody has done anything with it, unfortunately, but you can find it on YouTube, and you can find it on Dailymotion. as of now. That may change, but it's been there for a while. So the quality is not great because it's recorded from old VHS tapes. It hasn't been done with the latest technology, but still, check it out and give some love. What was you going to say, Kat?
My episodes are not the ones on those outlets. However, when we're doing show and tell, I have my original VHS tapes, 25 years old.
Yes. Going along the show and tell, Brett had asked earlier if anybody had any trinkets or clothes or anything that they had kept props from the show. And I know Kat had just shared her VHS tapes, and I think Anik has got something for us.
I don't know if you can see this.
No.
Uh-oh.
Turn off your virtual background.
There it is.
The jumpsuit?
Oh, no, it's a jean jacket.
Yeah, it's a jean shirt.
Jean shirt, that's right.
Yeah,
We
it's
had a jean
shirt.
jacket. We had a jean jacket also.
We also had a jean jacket. I don't have it
And I still
anymore.
have a sweatshirt, which my daughter Georgia has at university. She, as soon as she saw it, she stole it, and I never seen it again. But, yeah. And then I have the Star Academy pin here. Which,
Oh, we love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, isn't that great?
It's the Space Cases logo from the title screen.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the Star Academy, and we had it. These had all in our jackets, and the last show, day of the show, I very, very quietly took it off and popped it in my bag.
And the jean shirt, each one of us had one because we had to wear it while we were on a break because we couldn't eat food and have that food stain our costumes. So
They
that
didn't have
jean
lots of
shirt,
different- yeah.
that's right. That's right.
Well, they made me tons of clothes because I kept getting bigger in my pregnancy. So yeah, poor Trixie Rittenhouse. My hat's off to her, our costume lady. She'd come in. She'd say, "Okay, I'll add another 2 inches. Okay, I'll add another 2 inches here."
That's the magic of makeup and wardrobe. Just being able to
man.
configure things in such a way that it plays tricks to the camera eye to
Well,
just make it
I
look
wasn't
normal.
showing. I wasn't showing at all. But there was parts of my body that were growing exponentially, but not my stomach. So yeah. There's other stories to be told about that, but I don't know what age group people are watching. So.
Chances are most of them are around our age.
Oh yeah.
Well, I just remember Radu, and it was before I actually didn't want to say anything at the beginning. And not Radu. Yes, Radu, Christian. And Christian's quite short, right? He's a tiny guy. He's about 5 foot something. And I'm on set and he's like staring right at my front. And I was a little lopsided at the beginning. And he said, "Yo, Cary, what's up with your dick?" And of course I went, "I don't know, it's it's that time of the month or whatever." But of course, yeah, and that's what happens. Sometimes you just sort of grow in different and wonderful ways when you're first pregnant. So yeah. But
Space gravity's off. I just wanted to mention this in our episode for a moment that if you've been following our episode so far, you notice that there's quite a few connections to Are You Afraid of the Dark and some other shows that were kind of in the sci-fi realm of Space Cases. So if you're interested in hearing a little bit more about that, Alex and I have some little bit tidbits that we found while we were doing our research. So if you're kind of curious, here's a few facts that we've dug up for you that may connect to Are You Afraid of the Dark or other 90s Nick shows or other sci-fi shows. Starting off, we have composers Jeff Fisher and Ray Fabi, and production manager Rial Peru, who was also on Are You Afraid of the Dark. So it's fun to see them again working on this show as well. In addition, we also had Sheena Larkin as the Star Academy principal in episode 16 Long Distance Calls, who played various roles across Are You Afraid of the Dark tales, most notably Nanny from The Tale of the Lonely Ghost. We also have Chip Chuipka as Reaver in the same episode, who is also Ian Keegan in Are You Afraid of the Dark's The Tale of Cutter's Treasure. And Anik Chartier was also the lead makeup artist here and in Are You Afraid of the Dark. So there's a lot of crossover going on. As we also mentioned, Anik Matern, who was one of our guests, Thelma. she was also actually a character in Are You Afraid of the Dark. If you go back to the Tale of the Silver Sight from season 7, you'll notice that she plays Miss Gregory, who is heir to the original Midnight Society member Eleanor Gregory's fortune. We also have Jewel State, who played Catalina in Space Cases, but also played Kelly in the Tale of the Watcher's Woods and Cody in the Tale of the Unfinished Painting in Are You Afraid of the Dark. In addition, we also have some props reused from Are You Afraid of the Dark as set pieces. For example, the veiny walls in the Christa actually resembled the panels in the Tale of the Closet Keepers for that elevator leading to the spaceship. And if you look very closely in episode 17, I believe is King of the Hill, you'll see Goff's Cobra staff there just repurposed with a silver ball in its mouth for Harlan to use to like rule the species on that tropical planet. So that's pretty neat to see. I'm sure Goff is missing that. In addition, we have Goddard and Davenport turning into Spung. Their makeup does remind me a lot of the Taylors with their reptilian skin from season 2's The Tale of the Hatching in Are You Afraid of the Dark. If you look closely at the jump tubes that all the characters go through, you'll notice that they look very, very similar to the one seen in another sci-fi season of Power Rangers, which is Power Rangers in Space, season 6. Co-creator Bill Mumy also happened to voice Dr. Brainchild in the Ren and Stimpy episode Blazing Entrails. So it's funny that there's a Space Case Ren and Stimpy connection deeper than simply Space Madness and Space Cases stealing their spot on SNICK. James Bradford, another actor who was on Are You Afraid of the Dark, he played Shandu in The Tale of Magician's Assistant. He ended up playing Dram the Knight in episode 11, The Impossible Dream. And he was also General Lane Candle in Silver Sight. We also have Edie, who reminds me of a cross between Harry and the Hendersons and Bebo from Powerpuff Girls with its insatiable appetite and big furry, what do you call that? Just fur.
I don't know.
It's pretty wild because the more he eats, the more like monstrous he becomes. And it reminded me exactly of that Powerpuff Girl episode. It also reminds me a bit of Pudgy Pig from Power Rangers with its, endless appetite. We mentioned before in the episode that Miss Davenport's cranium in the episode Both Sides Now is similar to Jim's in The Head Saves the Earth from MTV's Oddities. And also Katie Segal, who voiced Ma in the episode Mothers Know Best, was also known for her voice work as Taranga Leela in the sci-fi animated series Futurama, which aired in 1999. Not too much longer.
And I have one to add to your list.
Oh.
Because you had mentioned the staff for Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Mhm.
The little crystal ball that it's not crystal, but the ruby ball that the snake had in its mouth for the staff, is that same one can be seen as a staff that Warlord Shank would use
That's
on his
right.
staff.
Yeah, it's housed in his weird like staff gun thing. Yeah, that's interesting. So there's a whole bunch of Easter eggs for fans who like crossover between Space Cases and Are You Afraid of the Dark. So all the more reason to go watch the series. Well, thank you all for joining us for this Space Cases retrospective. But before we go, we're going to do a segment that you all Slimesters and Gackoids are familiar with called This or That. So roll the jingle. This or that, time to play this or that. So for this or that, we're basically going to ask our esteemed guests a couple of questions based on Space Cases, and we'll just find out which one they prefer. So starting off, we're going to do this one. Do any of you prefer season 1 or season 2?
Season 1.
Season 1.
Season 2.
Season 1, man.
Season 1.
I was in more of them.
Right.
Season 2 probably, but the ones that I got to spend with Paul. But season 2 probably just because Paige was older.
Yeah, and your characters, Bova and Rosie, definitely did a lot more like actiony things too. So makes sense, especially on that jungle planet.
We had a lot of guest stars in, both seasons, but season 2, remember we had like I mentioned, like Katie Segal did the voice, even though she wasn't on set. But there was like Robin Leach, Michelle Trachtenberg.
Oh yeah, and Danny Tamborelli.
And Dane, which was that was like such a fun, because they're really fun, cool people, and I was sort of really, I was starstruck when I met Walter, and then obviously with Anik as well, I was starstruck because I was familiar with her work on Nickelodeon doing the animated shows. And so, but I didn't know at that time until she busted out one of the characters once, and I was just like, oh my God, like you did the voice of like that show. And so, because Sinar did a lot of the anime shows that aired on Nickelodeon that I watched, because I was a kid. And so but it was really fun, like seeing them and meeting them on set. They're really fun people, and so it's fun characters too.
Definitely. What I want to know is how Little Pete and Nona got themselves into space. Did we miss an episode of Pete and Pete here?
Yeah.
The crossover episode.
They used a Krebs Star rocket ship to aboard the Christa. There you go.
Because like you just want, it's not like they announced it really too. I think I remember like just one day they were on set and they were the ones who were chosen to play these characters, and you're like, wow.
That's right.
Can I get your autograph? Are you visiting? Oh, you're playing a character? Wow. Okay. So.
Yeah, it sounds like they were just walking by and they threw some slinkies on their heads and got them a robe and say, here are your lines, just get moving, doesn't matter.
So they film Are You Afraid of the Dark over on that side of the set. Oh, you're filming Space Cases. Okay, wow. Okay.
That must
have been fun to see. The other set is that way. Oh, you're on our show.
Oh,
sorry.
Our little show.
We replaced Ren and Stimpy.
Exactly.
That's okay. They're in a black hole. It doesn't matter now.
Second question. Catalina or Susie?
Oh no, that's not fair.
Yeah, I can't answer that. No one can answer that.
A question like that.
Yeah,
no.
I
can't answer that.
They were both such a treasure to have, but and they gave both such different qualities, and
that's right.
Yeah.
They're both lovely. Both of them are lovely.
That is the correct answer.
I was going to say unanimous tie.
The Christa or A Tropical Planet?
Both were fun. It's another like both. Like the Christa was fun, and that tropical planet with everything it had, the wonder, the mysteries, the vines, the little people, the other aliens was really fun too.
Yeah, both. I'll say both as well.
I would say both, but I felt very at home in the Christa.
The Christa was home. I think especially when we went back toward the latter part of season 2 was sort of a very kind of welcome transition. It was fun being on that planet and being able to sort of use that set and landscape in scenes, and the vines. And I think one of the episodes, like you mentioned, I shot down the vines with my electricity, but being on the Christa was cool. And it was fun that the show was able to sort of like, okay, it's hard, like they're trapped in space, you can't, obviously they're not going to have us land on different planets, but that they were able to sort of do that, but then in a clever way have us sort of back on the ship. Was cool.
What was so funny is the set was so small. Like, I mean, there was just one hallway with a one that went off at an angle, and it's just the different angles that the director of photography managed to put together to make it look like this huge ship, but it was really small little rooms, man.
Camera angles. Yeah.
It's quite an impressive feat when you think about it, because it feels from the viewer's perspective watching the TV like you're exploring all these different parts of the ship, and when you see like the stage in reality, it's like, oh, where's the rest of it?
Yeah.
Cool. Number 4, Elmira or Warlord Shank?
Elmira, I'll say, just because I got to work with her. It wasn't in many of the scenes with Warlord Shank, so
I have to agree. I mean, I had very few. Just sitting with George, just waiting to go on set, but I didn't have any real big scenes with him. And Elmira's,
However, partying with George was really fun.
and he has that sort of really, I can't remember if it was like Gilbert Gottfried. He doesn't actually sound like that character that he plays, like Iago and Aladdin. Like, he actually has like a different voice.
Mm-hmm.
And this is true of, some actors who play these types of characters. I don't know if it's the same with who was the guy from Police Academy, but George Takei really has this sort of baritone, really commanding presence and voice, and he just projects. And so when he was in a room, it was like he was George Takei. He was Warlord Shank. He was, he was all the characters he sort of plays, but he's just such a distinct person and persona. It's so funny because he's just kind of taken on this really this whole sort of different kind of level of fame and personality because of social media and his Twitter account. Like, he's really prolific on social media. But he was a really cool person. But yeah, Elmira, just because, I think she was closer in age to Paige and I and Christian, and I think we had more scenes with her.
Talk about makeup. Wow, that girl. I mean,
that was intense.
Her hair was really red and beautiful, but I mean, all the blue and wow. And green is very hard to keep on your face. I mean, they had to do, Anik, I think, had to do different layers to get the right color. Oof.
Yeah.
George had a mask. George had not a mask, but he had a
prosthetics.
Prosthetic. She did not. She just had it here, and the rest was all her.
And she was such a soft, gentle character compared to him. She was welcoming, and then to see the romance that she had with Christian was really something. It was nice. It was like, ooh, something's going on.
Yeah, definitely. I was hoping it would progress to something more, but it was just like to the degree of pen pals by season 2, just to keep it on people's radar. Yeah, right.
And that's the thing. The show was really clever because it was a kid's show. But they were able to sort of explore that, sort of this like young love, or in a way that was like consistent, obviously, with like Nickelodeon, and the programming that it was striving for, that was like very kid friendly, and platonic, but it was just in a really kind of clever, natural way. They were able to sort of express that angle between those two characters.
Final question, and this is kind of in line with, if you got to choose one of these to possess, which one would it be? Would you rather have Rosie's powers or Bova's powers?
I had Bova's powers. I'd never need a power cord or charger ever again for any electronics ever.
Good point.
Walking with a solar panel. It's like,
well, there's that.
The heat is nice, though. I tell you, once I'm in a sauna, I don't want to get out. So I don't know. I think, again, give me a bit of both. But if I had to choose one, I think I'd go with, in today's world, with Radu's.
I think I could just say something about Catalina's power for a second. Like, I look at, maybe I'm overanalyzing, but it's sort of the subversion of like the stereotype of a girl screaming in the face of danger, right? She has a sonic scream, but she can weaponize it. So I always thought that was very cool. So maybe I'm reading too much into that, but her power is her voice, and she can use it as a tool for like echolocation, or at one point, and use it quite literally in her defense, or offensively as a weapon. So yeah, and when I was a kid, I thought it was cool because it sounded like she was screaming into a fan, and I tried that, but boy, were my parents not happy when I tried that. But
you actually tried that?
Oh, I screamed into a fan. Oh yeah, 10-year-old me.
Spitting out a fireball. I think that is just an incredible power.
We saw that once,
and nobody would know it was you. You just, and then you just walk away the other way. No.
Well, I want to know is why all the aliens, like all the alien beings from other species, they all had superpowers, but Harlan Band had no superpowers.
He had charm,
leadership, acrobatics.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was weird that the show, you referred to them as their powers, but if they come from a planet where everybody has the same abilities, it's not. I don't think it's considered special then if you grow up in that environment. So the kids think that certain things are novel to them, like Bova can't produce heat or whatever, and Rosie can't shoot electricity. But I think back home it would just be like a normal everyday thing. So I always thought the term power, we're using my powers for something, like, because they can get them into trouble too. A lot of times the kids don't necessarily know how to use their powers effectively sometimes, which I think was also an interesting thing that was explored.
And they were judicious, like, it's like the Lord of the Rings, if the Eagles were in sort of every scene, or the Eagles like took the characters to Mount Doom to drop the ring off, there'd be no suspense, or, if our characters were going around just using our powers willy-nilly, I think it would derogate from sort of the focus on the characters, sort of the inner conflicts and their interactions. And at the end of the day, a lot of it was like a coming of age story, these characters and sort of their awkward teenage phases and sort of their rebellious personalities. And to Kat's point, they were misfits and they didn't fit in, and so how do you sort of squeeze in powers? It's sort of so I think the show was very consciously and wisely selective in the way it sort of chose to express.
Using your powers only when needed, needed, not only, but when needed, using the powers when needed, which made it a less violent show in that way.
And budgetary constraints, I'm sure. I don't know how much it costs for like Rosie's fire, or like my electricity, or, to CGI that. I'm sure it was probably,
It was a lot.
Pretty penny.
I know, I've met a lot of people who worked on space cases over the last years. I'm sure you have too, Anik, coming on set, and someone will come up and go, hello, Ms. Davenport. And I'm like, what? I was still very close with a couple of them who, one of them he did a lot of the electrics, the sparks and the purple eyes and stuff, all those special effects. He's a good
or the
guy.
lightning. You remember they would do lightning effect, and we had to wear like earplugs. And so there was a lot of that.
Thank you for all your answers for this or that.
Yes.
Slimesters and Gackoids, you may remember we did this before, all the way back in episode 9, Nick's Thanksgiving's Fest, but we're bringing it back because we have some exciting news to share with you. So without further ado, here's our segment that you forgot we had, but is now back, Nick Newsreel. And now it's time for Nick Newsreel. We have two new exciting news tidbits to share with you. So first up on our newsreel, we have some news about Are You Afraid of the Dark? All of you, I'm sure, are chomping at the bit to hear about season 3, but it's now confirmed. After the success of Carnival of Doom and Curse of the Shadows, we now have a third reboot miniseries that is on the docket for Nickelodeon that's coming up, and it's titled Are You Afraid of the Dark? Ghost Island. Reportedly, it's going to be about 4 episodes in the miniseries versus like the 6 in season 2 and the 3 in season 1. So I'm curious to see how that unfolds. It will be based on a fun vacation at a resort island, and it will include new members Kayla, who is played by Telsey Huynh from Modern Love, Max, who is played by Connor Sherry from The Devil You Know, Leo, who is played by Luca Padovan from the School of Rock musical, Summer, who is played by Dior Goodjohn, who's from Head of the Class, Ferris, who is played by Chance Hurstfield from A Million Little Things. Julian Curtis from Wishman also stars as Stanley Crane, the hotel manager at the island resort. Stanley Crane. I wonder if that has a connection to Stanley the innkeeper from season 6's The Tale of Vampire Town. What do you think, Alex? Going to be any Easter eggs from the original series in this, maybe?
Well, I mean, we had Sardou in the last one, and we also had Laura Bertram, who came in as an adult for the late series and was in the original. So I can absolutely see a slight Easter egg in there.
Sounds like it's possible. Hopefully we see a fan favorite and some more little nods to Are You Afraid of the Dark's past with this latest offering that'll be out later this year. So check that out. Is also going to be run by JT Billings, who also did The Curse of the Shadows, along with Ben David Grabinski. Yep. and Dean Israel as well.
And going along with our Nick Newsreel, we do have one more bit of news, much to my dismay, for anybody who tuned into the Nick Jr. episode, which, goodness, is a ton of you. That's our second most downloaded and viewed episode, which is, holy my, ugh.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah, of all things, which is amazing. I think it's so cool.
Yeah.
But you are well aware of my complete dissatisfaction with the character Face, but he is obviously loved by many people, so much so that they're bringing him back. They have confirmed that the 90s Nick Jr. mascot Face is coming back for Face's Music Party, which essentially is a music variety show combining live action and animation. It sounds like they're doing it very much in the style of Kids Bop, where they're taking popular songs and they're repurposing them to sound more contemporary. And of course, the songs are probably going to be like various nursery rhymes and things like that. And they're going to have contemporary artists come in to do things with them and do music videos. And that is pretty much it. It's just going to be a little musical romp featuring the pleasant character Face.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how it's going to unfold, because usually on the Nick Jr. bumpers, it was just, him making different facial expressions, and maybe occasionally there'd be like an object or two that would pop up that he talks about. So, maybe if he's singing, there'll be like, the bouncing ball with the words underneath him with some like trumpets or guitars or drums or whatever on the side to like help encourage people to like, grab these instruments, sing along. We're teaching about music. So, bang a drum, play a toy trumpet, whatever, just get in on the fun. So I'm curious to see how it'll unfold. Cool. Well, for those who are Nick Jr. fans or, are parents now and have kids who love Nick Jr., look forward to that. Face is making a comeback and he's going to be more smiling than ever. That about does it for our Nick Newsreel. Well, it's that time to set sail and hopefully head back to the Star Academy. But thank you all for joining us for the Space Cases Retrospective, where we go galactic to see the series overview with our lovely guests. Thank you, guests, for being here today. We definitely appreciate your time and your wisdom and your expertise on the show. And we might like to pose the question out to our Slimesters and Gatgoids. What do you love most about Space Cases, Slimesters and Gatgoids? If you're dying to share, your favorite characters, your memories, or any episodes, just let us know at SplatAttack2021@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at Splat Attack Podcast. If we get a lot of great responses, you may hear yours in a future bonus mailbag segment. Other than that, you can check out our Patreon for exclusive bonus content, including bonus episodes, behind the scenes, live streams every month. Those are pretty fun. At patreon.com/Splat Attack. You can also buy some shirts or mugs at Bonfire to help support this podcast, like the ones we're all wearing. Kat's wearing one too. Looks great. At bonfire.com/store/Splat Attack store. A lot of S's. And of course, you can interact with us if you want to like get an extra edge and see like this visually instead of just listen to it on your podcast platform of choice, to head over to our YouTube channel at Splat Attack Podcast. Other than that, if you want to dig a little bit deeper into the show, check out the website spacecasestv.com, or the Bill Mooney interview of Archive American Television to learn more about the show. So now that spring break is over, tune in next time as we graduate from the Star Academy and land safely back to Earth to attend Nick Takes Over Your School 2, 1999. After the positive reception of the first one back in episode 10, we connected with the winner of this particular event a little while back. And, despite the fact that we didn't have much information on this year, when we did that first episode, we were thrilled to get more from that random connection. So you don't want to miss that. The follow-up to one of our beloved episodes with that one infamous moment.
It was so fortuitous because we had just finished the episode and then we were both going, we have nothing about the year 99. And then I found the winner via social media. I was like, okay, can you please come shed some light on this? And they're more than happy. So stick around for the next episode.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. I mean, there's a lot of great celebrities from Nickelodeon who are part of that year, including like Larry Beth Denberg. I think Danny Tamborelli was there too. Many others. It's worth checking out. All right, Alex, it's that time again to drain the slime tank in the main engine room. All systems go as we chart a course back home.
Aye, aye, co-captain. Thelma, is there anything else we need to do to prepare the Christa for Lightspeed?
I'm not sure that you are my commander, Mr. Alex, but what if we stop off at Radu's home, Uranus?
Bova, do you have a map of Uranus? I'm sure
I've got
that
one around here somewhere.
Yeah. All right, Slimesters and Gackoids, we're gonna head out. Watch you later, Galactic Gactoids and Space Slimesters. See you next time.
But you asked for it.
That
Sorry.
was perfect.
I love it.
Thought,
I love
not
it.
best thoughts.
Oh, well,
That was great.
I love it so much.
Next time on Nickelodeon's Space Cases. An evil space probe turns back the clock on Goddard and Davenport.
Who are you? What am I doing here?
And the crew is left to fend for themselves.
You will do nothing without Einstein's permission.
Space Cases. This Saturday night at 9, 8 Central, only on SNICK.